All right, thank you everyone for coming today. We welcome you to our webinar on democratizing access to sport for all, unlocking the potential of public spaces. My name is Rachel Mate. I am the Project Impact Manager here at TAFISA and will be your moderator today. We hope you enjoy our program. We have chosen the speakers and panelists to bring a diversity of knowledge and backgrounds into the democratizing access to sport for all sector, specifically looking at making use of public spaces. If you'd like to introduce yourself in the chat, you may. We also welcome you to post thoughts and comments. If you want to pose a question, please do so using the Q&A button in the Zoom toolbar. We'll also be recording this webinar and we'll be posting it on the TAFISA YouTube page as well as on our website, where we'll share additional information and links from the speakers. So let's get it started. I'll hand it over to TAFISA Secretary General Jean-Francois Laurent and Leon van Dijk from SportBox to give us a welcome.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to all of you on behalf of the TAFISA Board of Directors, but also the TAFISA office. It's a very exciting webinar that we're introducing to you today, and this not only because we will discuss how to democratize access to sport for and physical activity through open and public spaces, but also because through this webinar we are kicking off a new partnership between TAFISA and SportBox, which we hope will develop to become a success story and also a case study on how the non-profit sector and the for-profit sectors can collaborate to create a better world through sport for all. And I would already like very much to thank Leon van Dijk and Timo Wozniak, the two co-founders of SportBox, for their openness, but also their vision, that is to create and democratize access to sport equipment to all populations. As the world is continuing to face a physical inactivity crisis, and the figures which are published regularly by the European Union or even lately by WHO are showing challenges to physical activity participations, we realize more and more that we need all hands on deck. We need all hands on decks and all kinds of solutions to complement each other and also to tackle this physical inactivity crisis, to provide new opportunities for people to engage in the practice of sport for and physical activity. We need to get different target groups. We need to look at different settings and different partners. So today we will not only talk about open spaces, but we'll also talk about equipment, about digitalization, about data, about programs, facilities, and infrastructures, and how we can bring them all together to put forward innovative opportunities, but also physical activity practices by all and at all geographies. Thanks to all of you for joining us today, and I would also like to thank all of our speakers, whom I look forward to listen to. And please make sure to remain until the end, as we will launch a call for action to democratize access to sport for all, and we would love to engage all of you in this call. Thank you very much, Rachel. This is it from me, and I pass on to Leon.
Yes, thank you very much, Jean-Laurent. Also, a warm welcome from my side. I'm very happy to see that there's such a big interest and turn up of the topic that we're going to discuss today, democratizing access to sports. We got in contact with TAFISA and through TAFISA now with all of you, initially through a cooperation with the German Olympic Committee that instated a couple of programs, multiple programs, to get people more active again after there was a reduction in activity among the population after the COVID-19 crisis. And I think many of these activities were very successful, and I'm also very happy that there's a representative from the DOSB as well within the speaker panel to elaborate more on that. So thank you, Mike. And the thing is, this has not been particular to Germany. This has been particular around the world. And that's why I'm so happy that we get the opportunity together with the TAFISA organization, where we very much think alike on the activities that we can do, and which is much more than one company, which is much more than one type of product or one type of technology, but much more a collaboration between different types of stakeholders, municipalities, unions, clubs, private and public partnerships, to in the end, make the world a little bit more active, get people across the organized and non-organized sports forms in a mode that all the benefits from active cities, that all the benefits from active communities come there, which are well beyond just the health benefits that Jean-Laurent just explained, but also the social benefits that come with it, and even the safety benefits from having these communities all around. So thank you very much for joining. I hope that you can all take something from this impulse from our white paper that is following up on the webinar, that you can take something for your local communities, for your parts. And yeah, Rachel, back to you for moderating into the next elements.
Thank you, Leon. Yes, thank you, John. Thank you, Jean-Francois, as well, for those words. Yeah, this is a space that if we can just take a hold of a lot of opportunities, we can do a lot. So I'm glad that we're all here today. So next, I'm going to pass the baton to my colleague at TAFISA, Gaëtan Garcia, Head of Operations. He'll be setting the stage for what we'll be discussing later today, more in depth.
Thank you, Rachel. Hi, everyone. I will be sharing my screen and basically going over quickly what we will, the topic of today. If you can allow me to share my screen, please. Otherwise, I do without. That's fine because I don't have to share. So, well, I'll just go ahead then without sharing my screen. That's fine.
Sorry, I just made you a co-host. You're good.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. There we go. Right, so today we are discussing democratizing access to sport for all, specifically looking at unlocking the potential of public spaces. I think a good reminder, even though we are all aware of the situation, is the fact that we are currently facing a big physical inactivity crisis. This is a global crisis. We have the numbers here from WHO, who show that 23% of adults, but also 81% of adolescents do not meet the WHO recommendations on physical activity. And this implies that an increase of mortality and increase of national non-communicable diseases that are affecting a large part of the population that could be prevented otherwise, and which also directly affect economies. So this means that this is a problem that is not only affecting us at the individual level, but then will affect us at a society level and economic level, and this is happening globally everywhere. And we see furthermore that during the pandemic, physical activity levels have dropped. And this is an issue that was very difficult for people and societies to recover from, because physical activity and sport for all is also about forming habits. So when people lose the habit of being physically active because of external factors, it becomes even harder to bring these habits back. Now, of course, the picture is not all grim, and we believe that there is something we can do about it. Open and public spaces can represent a great untapped potential. Right now, we know that more than 50% of the world population is living in cities, and the rate of urbanization actually showed that by 2050, we expect more than 68% of population to live in cities. We also have to notice that open and public spaces do not only concern cities, but exist in other areas as well. Public and open spaces can support physical activity, play, and sport for all. Sometimes they even have, whether we are talking about the parks or gardens, but also you have, infrastructures that are available publicly. Here you can see this is a photo from Frankfurt, actually, in a place where you have places for like playgrounds, but you also have football and basketball pitches that are freely accessible and available. We have a skate park, so you actually have sports facilities that are out there that are free to use, and that in principle anyone can use. Nevertheless, we notice that the rate of physical activity remains stagnant, and the usage of these public and open spaces is not yet fully exploited, because a lot of people still don't make use of them. So we are trying to look at why. And I think this is really the mindset we want to have for today. What are the barriers to using these public and open spaces? What are the barriers to physical activity and sport for all participation? And how can we break these barriers? So we can make sport for all truly for all by removing these barriers to participation, but we have to understand them. So this means we need to understand the needs of communities to really have interventions that are relevant, that are significant, and that can have an impact. So we also need to gather data to understand really what the people are, how the people are behaving, how they are living in their environments they are evolving in, and how we can adapt this environment, how can we fully activate public and open spaces. And one way to do this is also to make sporting goods available and easy to access nearby public spaces and infrastructures. I was mentioning earlier, we have area open football pitches, basketball pitches, etc. You also have paddle courts, you also a lot of different stuff available, but of course this requires you football without a football. So actually this is an extra cost sometimes for people. It can also be an extra issue that they have to carry it around, and in some cases in some sports can even be cumbersome to carry around all the equipment. So this is also one way we can think of how we can try to solve this issue. But it goes beyond that, because in the end of the day, we know that everyone can contribute, and this is one of the important messages of today as well, that if we want to solve this issue, if we want to fully activate public and open spaces, we need to make sure that we are involving every relevant stakeholder and bring them around the table. And we need to make sure that everyone as well feels that they have a responsibility and a mandate to act. So this concerns as well the public services and public bodies, whether we are talking about municipalities, we are talking about parks and recreations, we are talking about infrastructures, but it can also be about sports clubs, sports federations, who can also contribute, who can bring maybe their coaches, do some activation on pitches. So there's a lot of different ways they can act. And the private sector as well, which can contribute by providing services, by providing infrastructures, by providing sporting goods, and trying to see how all of these different actors can work together, because at the end of the day, I believe that we all share a vision that we want to reduce physical inactivity. We want to help solve this crisis, and so we have to find out better ways to contribute and work together to achieve our goals. So I think this is really the spirit of today's conversation, how we can look at democratizing access to sport for all, and making sure that we understand how every people, every organization at every level of governance can also contribute to the common effort and achieve the common goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Gaëtan, for that overview, and really kind of clarifying about what we're trying to do here with this webinar. So first, we want to hear from the audience a little bit. So I'm just about to launch a poll about, this is in connection with our 2 later case studies. I'll be sharing these results later in the chat, so please answer those. It's about collecting data. And so we're now going to have our first look at some more practical examples in this democratizing access to public spaces that we can learn from. So if you have any questions, feel free to add them to the Q&A. We'll have 1 question to each speaker right after their presentation, and the rest we'll leave to later in the webinar and the panel discussion when we have time. So without further ado, I now give the floor to Leon from SportBox. Welcome, Leon.
Thank you very much. So it's me again. I also share just a very small presentation as one of the use cases on what would be a way how to democratize access to sports, and in this case especially sports equipment. So Gaëtan already just said to us that more than half of the people, or more than 60% even, will move into cities. And when you look to the data that's out there from studies, is that more than half of the people would like to do exercises outside. And actually this number increased a lot since this has been even before the COVID crisis, and afterwards it's been rising quite a lot. But only a very small percentage of the offers to actually exercise are taking place outdoors. At least this goes for Europe. I could not find, let's say, statistics all around the globe, so this will differ a little bit region to region. But nevertheless, there is quite a discrepancy because there is much more offerings inside, although actually people definitely prefer it, and there's multiple studies that exercising outside has additional health benefits, and it's also easier. So one of the leading causes that there is less exercise outside is that there's missing equipment. So there's quite some spend on infrastructure, especially in the latest years. I would say multifunctional sport courts, calisthenics courts, they have seen a massive rise. But for many of these courts, there's still some small parts missing to make it into an overall workout and training that people are actually able to utilize it much more than without. And this is actually where we as a company come in, and also the thought that we had upon starting this. So I was living across a basketball court, and then you see such a court being built, which I think is great for the whole community. But then you need a ball to actually use it, which is even more difficult if you're much on the road and not all in the same place all the time. So this is then the concept of SportBox for those in the call that are not familiar with it. It's a combination of an app and a physical box. In the physical box, there are sports equipment stored, and through the app, you're able to open the box, and then on the locations where these are placed, on a sports court, in a park, you're able to use these boxes. The concept is kept fairly simple. It has two main functionalities. The first one is to look for the spots where these boxes are installed, so that you can use the infrastructure there together with the equipment, reserve a time slot, and then use the equipment. But for those that are not that familiar with sports and that find a high barrier to start a certain sport, doesn't matter if it's a fitness sport or a ball sport or a recreational sport, you can add some training videos into the app so that people can actually also do the first steps on their own. So we're not as good as, let's say, some digital offerings out there that solely focus on training videos. But we've integrated it so that people are actually completely autonomous, and they have the lowest threshold to start using equipment and start trying out sports completely in their own hands. The model is actually quite simple, and it's always in a partnership, either with municipalities, with a sports club, with health insurers, or also with companies, where we as a company provide a box and operational services to a municipality or to a sports club, and they provide these sports and leisure facilities. I mean, if it's a municipality, it's of course logically a court, but if it's a sports club, it can be, let's say, the own environment that they have created with courts, or even also without, if they share it. And they can attract, let's say, free sports and leisure facility to their citizens or to their club members. And for those, we then provide the app and operational services so that they are able to use it. And they provide us with data. So it was very interesting to see at least the start of the questionnaire, who is actually gathering data on if their infrastructure is being used. And I saw that there's quite some room for improvement. So I think one of the main benefits that we also provided, that we create a little bit of transparency in the locations and the frequency of use within these things. And as I said, it's just one of the solutions, and I'm very happy that Ben is also here, because they have, let's say, a little bit different approach, but also enabling more data and more understanding to tailor and to activate the people and the citizens all around. Just to show you how easy it is, I've embedded a little video. Let's see if it works through here. So that's a no. Okay, we'll just jump it. There's a small image video. I'll post the link in the chat afterwards, just to show you how easy it is to use the system, and to see to what extent this could also be beneficial for you. Now, of course, it's always a little bit tricky. I think if one of the operators of a company is telling you how great the company is, that's always fine. I think much more important are our collaborations with different cities around Germany, Netherlands, Switzerland, that actually got used to the concept a couple of years ago and then expanded on it because they could see from the data this is actually activating much more people and bringing value to their citizens. So there's numerous examples, and happy to see, for instance, also Miriam here from the DOSB within the panel that most probably is also able to expand on that, on their experience so far. Currently, there's different models for different facilities because not all the sporting areas are all the same, and they all have their own tailored needs. So that's also what we've been able to do, both from a price setting and also from a capability setting, so that it's even being made possible for the smallest, let's say, sporting area to activate it and to provide people with access to sports equipment so that they don't need anything else, they don't need anything at home, they don't need anything to purchase, and people are able to share it. And not everybody needs to own the same equipment, oftentimes, again, to use the same infrastructure. So in the end, if any, I would be very happy and very interested to get in contact with those that think that this concept would be interesting for their areas as well, to discuss certain projects that you are doing, be it collaborations with trainers, with, for instance, in the Netherlands, boot sport coaches, so coaches within a neighborhood, to see to what extent the infrastructure can be augmented with equipment sharing infrastructure, and see if there's something that we can mean for each other. Having said that, I hope that our approach at least gives you some kind of an impulse of what might also be useful for you. And then I'm happy to reach back to you, Rachel. Thank you very much, and please do get in contact if you're interested.
Thank you very much, Leon. That was very informative. We right now do not have any questions from the audience, but that's perfect because we'll save them, have the time for later to speak more with our panel. So I will pass it over now to Mr. Ben Jones from ActiveXchange.
Thank you, Rachel. I will just share my screen. So thank you for the chance to speak to everybody today. And I'm going to be talking to you about the role of data and insight in helping organizations collaborate more effectively to drive change at scale across populations. I was really pleased to hear Gaëtan talk initially around the responsibility of the whole system to collaborate in terms of driving change. I think it is super important, and ActiveXchange, as a data intelligence company, believes in providing products and services at all levels across the system, and effectively using data and insight to drive that change at scale, but also to drive collaboration, because we believe sincerely that a whole system approach is the only way that we're going to meaningfully impact and collectively change the behaviors and support individuals, particularly those who may face additional barriers in terms of making movement part of their lives, which I think is an important aspiration. So just to talk about how things are done currently and the challenges with how things work. So it's important to say, first of all, that there is no single solution that's going to solve all of our problems in terms of understanding population behaviors, how people are using public spaces, how people are using open spaces, even how people are participating in formal activity. Those organizations who represent federations and sports, I'm sure, would love to have more detailed insight in terms of the behaviors and participation of people even within their sport. So it is a difficult challenge to solve, and there is no single source of truth. So it's about bringing together different pieces of the insight jigsaw in order to build that collective picture and give us the best understanding. One of the challenges we have in different parts of the world, even in those parts of the world that have invested heavily in this, is that current measures of activity are really limited to transactional reports or membership or self-report data which really misses the vast majority of the behaviors of the population and how people are moving in and around in their daily lives. So we have data on people who are taking part in formal activity, but even that is limited. But what we miss are the vast majority of the population who might be moving for utilitarian purposes, or who are taking part in activity in these open recreational spaces that Leon was talking about in his presentation. One of the other challenges is that sometimes when we talk about data and insight, it can be quite scary for individuals and for organizations. There can be a perception or a feeling that this is something that requires a lot of resource, specialist skills for analysis and interpretation. And a lot of the time, a lot of the data is limited to those people who are most likely to respond or are going to be counted because they're already doing something, which are not the large proportions of the population that we might be interested in terms of policy and affecting change at population level. But we think there is an increasing role for technology to be part of the solution in addressing that. And I'm going to talk very briefly about a couple of ways in which that might be the case. So one of the ways in which our company works is to work with sports organizations in formal environments to use membership data and participation and participant data to deepen our understanding around who is participating by getting a better appreciation of the type of people and literally the people who are participating. We can understand the social impacts more directly. We can understand the demographics of the people who are participating. Are we catering? Is our sport serving the populations who we are most interested in, or are we serving other populations? And therefore, what might we do to target our work, our development priorities, our infrastructure to better serve those people who we are most interested in engaging? And our platform and one of our services enables that detailed analysis of individuals, but also we're able to aggregate that information across sports at a regional and at a national level to give organizations a picture of how participation varies across sports and how it reflects the wider society. So you can see the differences in terms of participant demographic and profiles in comparison to wider society. So that's just a very brief example of one of the things that is possible with formal sports participation. But I'm also interested to talk to you about how we can understand more about how people are accessing open spaces and public spaces and how we can work more to kind of democratize access to those spaces. And movement data is one vehicle to do that. Movement data within our platform is using GPS data from mobile phone applications, using more than 45,000 mobile phone applications, the GPS data from that, from nearly 1 billion people across 30 billion locations across the world. So we have global coverage and are able to roll out our platform in any country in a very quick and easy way. One of the ways in which we are able to provide that analysis is to go to any location at any place in the world and to visualize through a heat map the intensity of movement and the number of people in any place at any particular time. So that enables us for the first time to passively and objectively understand the use of informal and public spaces that would otherwise have no robust data to understand the usage of. So we can quantify the social impacts, we can understand the comparative uses of this space, either comparing itself to previous months or in previous years, or comparing directly with other facilities so that we can make a value judgment as to the impact of particular places and spaces. Here's just an example in the UK and England, which shows you, actually this is around the time of a park run initiative at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning in a park in Cambridge. But you can also see people recreationally using the water space to the north of that particular image. And then the platform also enables you to pull through robust data into the dashboard to understand trends of usage, time of usage, and the number of people that may be using different places at different times. We're also able to conduct more detailed analysis using polygon-based spatial definition. So we effectively define a particular place of interest and provide much more detailed analysis which enables you to also understand where those people have come from, which also again enables further analysis around social value. So do those people come from areas of deprivation and areas of inequality, or are those people using these places and spaces from areas of affluence? And therefore, what might you do in terms of your work within the system, either as a municipality or as a sports provider or as another part of the ecosystem, to drive change and to increase activity, but also prove impact? So you invest in capital change, you improve a facility, or working with SportBox or another provider, you initiate some type of intervention, and then you're able to robustly and objectively measure the impact over a prolonged period of time. So hopefully in a very short space of time, I've provided you with an insight into the role of technology and how that can deepen our understanding of both formal activity and sport, but also in the use of open spaces and how we can quantify and robustly measure the impact and drive future work to increase accessibility and improve outcomes for everybody. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ben. It's very interesting to see the data-driven approach that ActiveXchange has been able to take. It's something that's missing from a lot of programs, and it's not an easy thing to do. So we do have a question from the audience to you, and we'll also throw it over to Leon later. So specifically for ActiveXchange, is it, according to you, effective encouraging and development of community sport to support democratizing access to sport for all in low socioeconomic groups or populations? And this is from Shmuel Yerushalmi. So did you get that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the basic premise and principle is, with limited or subjective data, it's very difficult to make informed decisions as to what we do, either as individual organizations or collectively as a system. And open spaces are an area where there is really scant data and insight. So anything that we can do to add quality and quantity and obviously robustness of data and insight is going to help us make better decisions, but also prove the impact of our work and understand what works, what doesn't, and therefore what we might do individually or collectively to improve outcomes for those populations that we're most interested in.
Yeah, thank you. Agreed. And the same question to you, Leon. So, with SportBox, how are these effective in encouraging and developing community sport systems and democratizing access for lower socioeconomic groups?
So, I mean, one of the major drivers of that is that the system as such per default is free for the users. So then it very much depends on the localization of these boxes. We've had projects within refugee homes. We've had projects in low socioeconomic areas that were specifically targeted to increase activity. And this is a little bit why I also like these two cases, whereas ActiveXchange is using, let's say, overall data to get a holistic view. With our system, it's very easy to see to what extent the system or the measure that has been implemented, putting equipment there, is actually effective. So the one is very much unidirectional. The other one is holistically. In the end, both will say if it will work or not, but based on different types of sources. And I think both to that extent can be very useful. And I think the main underlying message is do try and take the data that's available to you to make those measurements and to see what works instead of just putting stuff there and hoping that it works.
Yeah, agreed. And yeah, I mean, from our poll that we had, sorry, going back to the numbers, we did have more people than I may have expected with collecting data. So they can definitely partner with also collecting the more advanced data and tools that are available in the marketplace. Okay, so thank you guys both for presenting these case studies. It's great to see practically what's going on the ground. So next I'm gonna have a quick call to our audience again. So here, we have a question about the biggest barriers to implementing these kind of solutions and other, bigger scale solutions into enter your community, and not just big scale, but you know, small scale in the municipalities and smaller areas. Okay, and then so while you're filling that out, which again, thank you for answering, we'll add them into the chat later. So we'll now transition into the panel discussion. So we have 4 panelists here today who all work in different kinds of organizations and all have unique perspectives and experiences to bring to this field, increasing access and activating public spaces. I'll briefly introduce each one, and then we'll start with a question about their work to introduce you more to them. So here I have Steffen Strasser from IAKS. He's a member of the IAKS Executive Board, which is the International Association for Sports and Leisure Facilities. I have Germantė Bartkutė from the Lithuanian Association Sport for All. She's the executive director there. I have Phelim Macken from Limerick Sports Partnership, where he is the manager there. And then I have Miriam Seib from the DOSB, who is involved in the program management of Restart Sport Moves Germany. So I'm going to start with Steffen. So as a member of the IAKS board, what do you see as the trends in public spaces at the moment?
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I'm representing IAKS here, a worldwide association taking care of good and exemplary sport and movement facilities. And as well, we are spiritus rector of the FSB exhibition in Cologne. Yeah, main trends. Good question, Rachel. There are a lot of different trends. I think referring to the topic of this webinar, I think I have 3 main points to make. The first point is what Leon and Ben talked about, to have a low threshold offers to the people for movement within public spaces, to lower the burden to make people move, because the high active mover, they are moving anyway. But we need to reach as well to get our goal, to get more people moving. We need to reach the non-movers, I would call them like that. Yeah. So, and how to move them is by a low burden, by a low threshold offer. And I think really that is a trend and in the future to go to, not only wanted but as well be realized. Secondly, question of multifunctionality. When we do facilities and when we build facilities for the future, we believe that multifunctionality is a key for good facilities to enable future trends to be part of the movement, not to make facilities only for one type of sport or for one type of movement, but referring to democratizing it. Sorry for that. It is important to have multifunctional spaces. And this is as well connected very much with the question of inclusivity, which is as well an extremely important trend for the future, not only referring to the topic of accessibility, but to see the full scale of inclusive movement spaces. And the third one is not establishing new things, but to eliminate anti-movement infrastructure. Just imagine how many sports parks, how many public spaces are there where it is written, please do not cross the garden, yeah, do not touch the ground, no tree pressing here, and so on and so forth. There are still a lot of public spaces in schools, in public spaces, in parks, etc., which are definitely built for anti-movement, anti-moving infrastructure, I would call them. And there is a lot of opportunities and a lot of possibilities with not a lot of money to lower the burden there as well and try to make these anti-movement spaces into movement spaces. So these are the 3 topics.
Definitely, yeah. All moving into one another as well. Yes. And I see a lot of that. So in Germantė, now this would be a great point to speak about the Healthy Stations project in Lithuania. It sounds a lot like what you just mentioned, Steffen Leverrier, and how you implemented them from the Sport for All perspective as executive director of Lithuanian Sport for All Association.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I want to mention that Health Stations is actually a pilot project in Lithuania. We started just 2 months ago, so it's quite a new experience for us. And I would like to pay attention that the need of health stations reach us from the bottom, especially from the physical activity teachers and trainers. More and more physical activity coaches are looking for opportunities to encourage people to exercise outdoors. However, the main problem they face is inventory storage and transportational options. We were talking with trainers and coaches, and they said that we could bring 10 or 20 people to the trainings, but we can't take all equipments we needed for quality training. So this is how we came up with the idea of building a health station, which will be like outdoor sport club in a public park. And we want to bring different physical activity trainers who conduct different trainings. We can offer, for example, lessons how working with Nordic poles, yoga, functional or mobility trainings, and many more. During the week, we offer the local community from 10 to 12 different outdoors activities led by professional trainers. Our main idea and goal is to teaching people to sport outdoor. In the future, we hope that there will be less and less need for trainers, and people will be able to come and exercise independently after just picking equipments from our health stations. But for today, taking into account people's habits in Lithuania, we see that it's very important to have a person, a coach, who will teach and show people how to do some exercise. Also, what we saw in these 2 months, that people need to have a strict schedule and know what time to go to visit some different physical activities. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that overview of them. It sounds like, yeah, it does help with being low barrier and accessible and professional as well. And so going a little bit more larger scale now, going over to Phelim from Sport Ireland and the Limerick Sports Partnership. How are you transforming public spaces as a municipality?
Thank you, Rachel, and thanks for the opportunity to share on this very informative discussion. I suppose just a bit of context. So a sports partnership's remit is to inform, educate, and enable key target groups and sedentary populations around being physically active and the importance of being physically active. So we are one of those. We're a network across the country. And I suppose traditionally we would have been very much around activating people. You know, if the local authorities and the public sector built infrastructure, then we would have spent a lot of time around the activating of it. And I think what we have been lucky with is a greater investment in sport and physical activity in our country as a whole. And therefore, the concept has broadened in relation to what is now on offer. So we're very fortunate to be part of a pilot project in our country called Active Cities, where the 5 largest cities are, you know, delivering under the GAPA framework, how they're going to engage their communities through active environments, active societies, and active people. But the key part of that is the active systems piece. So it's how we build relationships with the key stakeholders, how we get ourselves positioned in those rooms to be part of strategy, to be part of policy, and to be part of plans. So that has been a huge shift in relation to our role. But a lot of the times that door only opened because we now had some capital funding to help with infrastructure. And the other thing that we need to do quite rapidly in our country really is we're a very traditional country for quite a long time, very traditional in particular sports. And we are not very good at municipal. Everybody has ownership. So soccer clubs want their own pitches, GAA want their pitches. So we're poor that way. So we're really developing that a little bit more. So that has led to us under the Active Cities banner, and thankfully we're also part of a Pacte Plus project, where we're looking at how we can make our parks more accessible, but with a particular emphasis on parks close to very marginalized and disadvantaged communities. And the other thing that I suppose is so important for us as a country is we also have had a huge change in relation to being a multicultural society now. And therefore our traditional offerings of sports is not going to meet the needs of our new communities and our new demographics in our country. So we are now working collaboratively under the Active Cities banner in looking at what we can put into our parks that sometimes, unfortunately, were a hotbed for antisocial behavior due to low footfall, etc., being in those parks. Whereas I know Leon is promoting, SportBox there, but we were fortunate to meet with them in Dusseldorf at the TAFISA conference. But we, under the Active Cities banner, have started with a box up model very similar, and that has transformed some of our parks in relation to driving footfall to it. Because again, as some of our speakers said earlier, it's about having that equipment. You can put in the infrastructure at times, but if you don't have the equipment, that is going to be a barrier. So we are putting that in to make sure that it's at a no cost, and that we have tech ball tables, volleyball courts, and more inclusive equipment in our playgrounds. And then we were fortunate to be able to put in a full-size basketball court, which has driven massive footfall into a park that had very limited engagement in sport and physical activity. So it's really about using the GAPA framework, where we can, being more broader in relation to the variety and types of activities that are offered in our park, and kind of moving away from that traditional concept of a playground for the under 10s and then a mugga, for the teenagers. That really doesn't cut it anymore. We need to be more diverse in the offerings of the sports, and then consulting with our communities as well to see, what kind of activities they want to do, and then see that proof of concept and see how it works.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, you do need to adapt and work with what needs to come up next, which is a great transition into Miriam from the perspective of an Olympic committee, but also with the Restart program, which was started after the pandemic in Germany. Can you introduce how you positioned public and open spaces as a key element?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Rachel. Hello from my side. Hello from Germany. Well, first of all, a short introduction to the program, which also Leon was talking about. The Restart program was founded with 25 million euros by German government, originally until the end of 2023. Well, we still have a little bit of money, so we are still working on it. Well, the program consists of various pillars and modules that addressed associations, clubs, volunteers, club members, commune and citizens. Well, the aim was, among other things, to get more people in Germany moving again after the corona pandemic, and to get them excited about club sports. To compensate for the training backlog for instructors and referees, and especially to support the club development in Germany. One of the modules aims to support 150 public sport boxes for various cities. The goals especially of this project, where the free use of sports equipment is intended to promote an active lifestyle and motivation to socialize and to do sports together among the population. Well, the second one was sports clubs should strategically address the use of green and open spaces for qualified sports offerings for long-term member development and retention. And the clubs should present the advantage of qualified and supervised training compared to the individual training on sport boxes. Well, and the big goal of this module was for the sports clubs to gain more members again and to build long-term cooperation between the commune and the clubs.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for that overview of the program. And so now going into more of the open discussion part of our program, So I want to kick it off with a question about partnerships and roles, which a couple people have already touched upon. So here it's, what are the most important partnerships to establish and connections to foster to bring about change in public spaces in your experience in working in your organizations? And what, and so the most important partnerships, and then what was the biggest roles of those partnerships, and kind of how are they able to support one another? So I will throw it over to Miriam first, just talking about the DOSB, yeah.
Yeah, in our area, the most important partnership was the association and the commune. Clubs often do have their own sports facilities, and or do not have their own sports facilities, and depend on the public halls. So most of the time there are capacity problems, etc. So you don't have the chance to make some more offers for the members or for the people in the town. And now with the use of the public spaces, it's an alternative to do some offers, club offers, and it's also a trend to do more outdoor sports, especially after the corona. And so it's a good opportunity and a chance for everyone.
Thank you. And Phelim from Sport Ireland, what would you say to the most important partnerships, and then also what their roles were?
Yeah, so I think you know, as I mentioned earlier, it's our positioning. So every county in Ireland has a local government and has a local authority. And then we have our sports partnership network then layered on top of that. Unfortunately, in our local government and councils, they don't all have a sports department. So the areas of responsibility for different infrastructure like parks, like swimming pools, like trails and cycle lanes, etc., is across multiple directorates. So under the Active Cities banner of work and also the PACTE project, we hosted a governance workshop as part of the PACTE Plus. But it allowed us to get presenters from each of those directorates within local government and the local authority to present on their work, but also to connect them to what we were doing around the activation piece and the communities. And I think that gave a greater understanding and, I suppose, an appreciation and a recognition of the work that we each can bring to enhance any piece of work or any kind of project in the area, that we all ultimately want the same goal, but that there are other ideas and new concepts that can greatly enhance an initiative like that. So we're fortunate that Sport Ireland, as our governing authority, and the connectivity down through our local government and obviously the relevant plans and strategies, that's the key piece for us. And obviously having some capital funding to come with that, which strengthens your hand and gets you a seat at the table where the decisions are made.
Yes, yeah, that is a unique element of Sport Ireland, having the governing body there. And then over to Steffen. So with IAKS, what about the partnerships there with an international association?
Yeah, I think from my experience, I want to say that Phelim is absolutely right. So it's not really an international question, because all the things we are doing is on a very local basis usually. And I think one of the biggest problems there is a cross-departmental work together. Yeah, so when you have a sports department and a green department and a youth department, and everybody has its own interests, especially when it comes to public spaces. The green party or the green people are usually have a different approach than the sports people. Yeah. And the youth and the pedagogical question as well. So and these departments do not work together in a good way. Yeah. So even though they have different budgets, so the question is which budget is paying for this and who is taking care of it, who's taking care of the maintenance, etc., etc. And when we talk about important partnerships, I think this is one of the most important ones within the municipalities. So it's not about the question of because budget is never enough there, and money it's never enough money. It's a question how to use it in a good way for our goals, and there are the interdepartment troubles are usually holding back the efficient way of spending the money in a good way. And I think that is Leon is already nicking here, and I'm sure that Phelim has the same experience, and Miriam as well. So and Germantė as well. So that it's a big problem within the municipalities and the ones which are responsible. And so this is a very important partnership to establish.
Thank you. Yeah, partnerships cannot be overstated. So one final round between everyone. So we have a last rapid fire question for you. So in just 10 seconds, what is one recommendation to develop sport for all in public spaces? So we'll start with you, Phelim. Just one recommendation, doesn't need to be about partnerships, but I'll just give you 10 seconds.
I think adopt the model of active systems under GAPA. I think it just opens up the doors and makes people very aware of how that connectivity and collaboration will be so beneficial.
Yeah, definitely. We have leading organizations, saying, giving us guidelines to do. Okay, and then I'll go back to you, Steffen. What would you say, one thing?
Okay, there are do's and don't. There's a big do. Connect local opinion leaders, sports club, youth organizations, etc. Don't just land an infrastructure like a UFO, or an UFO, somewhere, and don't integrate it into the local structures.
Okay, and Miriam, what would be your one recommendation?
Yeah, well, actually really easy, but not really easy to do. Well, I think about many employers in the commune who are interested about sports, government that provides a lot of money for sports, and many motivated people in the cities. Yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah, that's great for Germany and to find other funding sources. Okay, and Germantė, 10 seconds on your one recommendation.
I think that we need to communicate more about the benefits of outdoor sport because we will inspire business maybe to take initiative to set up outdoor sport clubs or perhaps bring outdoors fitness equipment. And in the same time, the people which are working in government will become maybe more flexible because they will believe in this idea themselves about the benefits of physical activity.
Thank you. Yes, and thank you, panelists, for all of your open and honest answers. We appreciate you being here today. I wish we had another half hour to speak with everyone. But we also want to hear from the audience one more time. So I'm giving you that last 10-second answer on how we can make public spaces better for sport for all and physical activity. So I've gone ahead and launched the poll, and we will be sharing this on our post-event newsletter. So thank you, panelists. And then I will share my screen again. Okay, you said it. Okay. Okay, thank you, everyone. So we brought you all here today, and we have a call to action. So by prioritizing outdoor physical activity and investing in community initiatives, we can tackle global challenges and build a healthier world. It's time to democratize access to sport for all in sport and recreation, and involving stakeholders from all sectors. We must provide the necessary infrastructure and resources and equipment to empower citizens to lead active lives. Together, we need to capitalize on community spaces to combat the physical inactivity crisis and create a better future for everyone. So we believe that these actions can be made using the strength of 3 pillars. So starting with the individuals, we need tailored interventions that are inclusive, low barrier, innovative, and fit well into people's lives. Looking at the larger scale, we need to think governance, so cross-sectoral partnerships, participatory approaches with communities, and implementing policies that enable democratization of sport for all. And then finally, we need to look at the larger environment, reshaping our urban planning and urban environments to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to play and exercise. So if you'd like to know more, we have created a resource. So everything we discussed today is represented in a call to action that we have published in partnership with SportBox. This paper is built on data from leading organizations in this space. You can take this to stakeholders to educate and establish the importance of re-envisioning public spaces and showcase the potential to democratize access to sport for all in these spaces. We invite you to take a look, share with colleagues and partners in the field. We'll send the paper in our follow-up email, and you can also find it linked in the chat. We believe that everyone has a role to play in democratizing access to sport for all. So thank you everyone for coming today. We have a final announcement. So you guys will be starting our new cycle of the TAFISA Mission 2030 workshop series in collaboration with IOC. So we invite you on June 26th to join the first webinar on capacity building in sport for all, looking at are we reaching our goals and how can we strengthen our approach for better impact? And we'll have more information in the coming days. So finally, I want to thank all of our speakers, our panelists, our partners at SportBox, my colleagues here at TAFISA, and most importantly, our audience here, our global Sport for All movement. So we thank you for attending and your active participation. Have a great rest of the day, and we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar.